Okie dokie. All right. So thank you very much and welcome to our Florida PowerShell user group meeting. We have tonight, speaker is Adam R. Driscoll, Microsoft MVP in PowerShell, and his topic will be PowerShell Tools for Visual Studio. Any question? My contact information is down there. I guess Adam will, during his presentation, he will also provide his email in case of any questions. Go for my quick slides in here. This is my user group sponsors. Thank you to every one of them for providing us the ability to present, show, and educate everybody about PowerShell and all these different products during our sessions. Saving Technology is my major, my most popular editor, and also all the suite of all the products that they provide. Check them out. You can download and test drive them. And also don't forget to join the Microsoft Virtual Academy. Tons of information for free, tailored for IT pros and developers. And it says over 1 million registered users. And right now I think it's about 2 million. So good quality information is in here. Azure, Visual Studio, everything related to IT pros and DevOps. Okay. So Adam, you can feel free to go ahead and disconnect me and put your session on. You have the floor.
All right. Thanks, Max. We'll just wait a second for this thing to connect. Let me know when you can see it. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about the PowerShell Tools for Visual Studio. It's just it's kind of a side project that I started. So first of all, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a PowerShell MVP. I've been a PowerShell MVP for about 2 years now. I started doing a lot of low-level kind of PowerShell scripting and kind of got into it from there. I work at Dell during my day job. I blog at csharpening.net. I've contributed to a couple books, and my big side project right now is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. And then I live in Wisconsin, Madison, capital of Wisconsin. So if you're ever around, drop me a line. So what is the PowerShell Tools for Visual Studio? Well, first of all, there is no native PowerShell support in Visual Studio. PowerShell being the flagship scripting language that Microsoft is now pushing, it's kind of surprising that they haven't actually integrated PowerShell support, but I think the idea is that there are more IT pros than developers using it, so that there isn't, that big push to have, PowerShell inside Visual Studio. That said, there are more and more things that developers are doing with PowerShell, and it's becoming more and more important to have something like this inside Visual Studio. So kind of my first incarnation of this, it was called PowerGUI VSX. It was built on PowerGUI, and it pretty much just rehosted the PowerGUI control inside Visual Studio. It had a project system and a debugger and everything like that, but it wasn't really native support. It required PowerGUI to be installed, while the new incarnation does not. Posh Tools is still in very active development. I just released the 1.0 version, got out of beta in earlier July, so it was kind of a big milestone for me. And right now I have over 80,000 downloads of this tool, so it's pretty popular in the dev space. So there's a lot of people using PowerShell for things like Azure or Hyper-V scripting and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of why I kind of went down this route. The requirements are Visual Studio 2012 or 2013 or 2013 Integrated Shell. 2013 Integrated Shell is a free product. You can actually download it right from the internet. It's about 200 megabytes, and then you can actually install the PowerShell Tools for Visual Studio right into Integrated Shell. So the idea with Integrated Shell is it doesn't have anything except the extension that you install in it. So in this case, it would be solely a PowerShell editor inside kind of a Visual Studio shell. It also requires PowerShell v3, v4, or v5. I haven't done extensive testing with v5 yet, but the interfaces that I use typically don't change very much between versions, so I'm assuming that it'll still work. So I need to do some testing before that's actually released to the wild. So I'm just going to kind of go through some of the editor enhancements that it provides in terms of PowerShell support in Visual Studio. It kind of provides what you'd expect in a full-fledged language inside Visual Studio. First of all, there's just the actual editor enhancements, like syntax highlighting. So this wasn't even part of Visual Studio until Visual Studio 2013 Update 3. They actually implemented basic PowerShell syntax highlighting because the Azure tools started shipping PowerShell scripts as part of their project templates. So rather than having a flat file, they started doing a little syntax highlighting, but that was the extent of the support. The other thing you'll notice is things like brace collapsing and stuff like that, so you can collapse different regions of code to make it easier to navigate. And it also has like a function drop down, so you can quickly jump between functions in large script files. Additionally, there's IntelliSense, like you'd expect out of any other PowerShell or Visual Studio editor such as this. Everything the ISE can pretty much tab complete, the Visual Studio Tools can as well. So variables, functions, and commandlets, parameters, paths, that kind of stuff. There's also an integrated project system. So this is kind of something that the ISE really doesn't offer. So one of my other projects, Posh Internals, I use entirely inside of, I develop entirely inside Visual Studio. So you can see I have a Posh Internals project, and from there I have a big collection of all the scripts that make up the module. And what's kind of nice is I have some C# intertwined in there, and I get syntax highlighting for that as well. So that's kind of one of the benefits of this. And the project system also lets you set different properties on the project, like passing in script arguments or putting different components of modules, such as the author, the copyright, that kind of information, right in the project system. There's a really robust debugging system inside Visual Studio that I try to take full advantage of. First of all, there's breakpoints, obviously. That's a key to debugging. And they show up, you can see on what line. There aren't conditional breakpoints yet, but it's something I'm investigating. There's stepping, just like you would in any other editor. You can investigate all the variables that are currently in the current scope. So it allows you to actually expand the variables as well. So if you have complex objects like PS object or execution context, those kind of things, you can actually expand those variables and walk down through the different properties and recursively, investigate what is going on inside your script. And you can also hover over variables right in the actual source code. So rather than having to dig through the locals window, you can actually hover over and expand just like you would in the locals window and find out all the information you need about the variables that are in your active script, pretty much. And there's call stack support. So if you're deep within a couple function calls or something like that, you can actually see where you came from. So you can see which line number called which part of the script that you're in. So that's pretty helpful. Oh, still got me? All right. So one big advantage, or one big feature I kind of added in the recent versions of the tools have been unit test support. So there's two big unit test modules that are out there for PowerShell currently, and that's pstate and pester. Pester is kind of gaining a lot more traction right now, and there's actually a pester test adapter that I built for Visual Studio. So that allows you to not only discover your tests, but run them inside Visual Studio, and it consumes the test data just like it would any other .NET testing framework or C++ testing framework. So you can see which tests are failing. You can get more information about how those tests are failing, and in this nice little dialog pretty much inside the Test Explorer. And these tests could be, alongside other tests for your C# projects or your C++ projects, and it all kind of looks transparent in terms of which tests are passing and failing. All right, so I'm going to show off a couple demos in terms of how to use the tool, how to create a project system and all that kind of stuff, and maybe some debugging and everything. So I have this little math module inside Visual Studio. And you can see that projects that are the PowerShell project type have this PowerShell logo. And in this case, this is actually a REST web service, this Math Cloud. But I have this math module that has just these like standard kind of mathy functions that I created out of some of the standard math methods on the math class. So convert to absolute value, get max, get min, get hypotenuse. You can see of all those standard editing features I was talking about, like collapsing and expanding things. See a syntax highlighting, obviously, and you can jump between different functions. So if you have the different functions defined, it'll actually jump the cursor to the different functions so that you can, if you have a very big script, that can be pretty helpful. And like I said before, like everything is organized inside this project system, and if you right-click on the project and go to properties, you'll see that you can set all these different parameters for, in this case, module. I had one guy that he's actually taking this information and generating the module on the fly, which is something that I want to do with the build system, because you can actually integrate these PowerShell projects into the build system, and you could do things at build time, such as generate these manifests. And then I can also do script arguments. So that's kind of cool. So if I wanted to actually debug one of these things, I could say, get min, value 1, value 2, and it'd be nice if my IntelliSense was working. So now what we can actually do is set a breakpoint just like you would in any other project. Now if I F5 run this, oh, oops. Also starting up something else. 1 second. Let's try that again.
Hey Adam.
Hey.
You type get mix intentionally, or we're supposed to be get min?
Nice catch. Why is it not hitting this breakpoint? All right.
Breakpoint because yeah.
All right. There's probably a bunch of errors being written out to the REPL window. Alright, so now you can see that I'm debugging. And you can see my value is 2 here, my value is 4 just by looking at it. So here's the locals window. The locals window actually provides you with all the variables that are in your current scope. So, I only, what's that?
Your screen not refreshing.
Oh, it's not refreshing? Here, let me.
Yeah, there you go.
Let me just redo that then.
I'm spotting you. Sorry.
No, that's good. I'm glad. The screen presentation did not start because of an error. Crap.
It's a link error?
Yeah.
Alright, look, let me do this. I'm going to pause the recording, okay?
Okay.
Let me... Alright, go ahead.
Alright, so I called this getMin function, and now it hit the breakpoint that I set inside getMin, and you can see I can look at my variables, so I can see variable 2, or value 1 is 2, value 2 is 4, but if I look at my locals window, you can see I have all the different variables that are available in my scope. So things like arguments are always there, the $sign variable, the host that I'm running in, so you can actually expand these things and drill down into the different components of these particular objects. So you can get all kinds of information about all the variables inside there. The other thing you can see, like if I open my call stack window, you'll see that I'm in this particular script at that line. Oops. Line 73 is where I executed it from, and now I'm at line 37, so you can see exactly where I came from, which is nice when, especially in multi-script function calls. You don't really know where you came from or how you got there, sort of thing. Stack trace can be really nice. You can actually also set up watches. So if I were to right-click on one of these variables, you could actually add a watch and it will watch that variable, and it'll update this as that variable changes. So if this went to 6 or whatever, it would actually highlight this in red, and then you would know that variable had changed. So that's kind of what the watch window is for. So these are all just kind of standard features of Visual Studio that I'm hooking into by taking the PowerShell debugger and kind of hooking it up into the different ways that you need to hook into the Visual Studio API. Uh-oh, my screen flashed again. Can you see, is it updating?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. All right, one of the big things that I actually added for the most recent version of PowerShell Tools was this REPL window. So this is actually the same REPL window that is used by the Node tools for Visual Studio and the Python tools for Visual Studio. So I kind of got the benefit of all the work that they had done in this REPL window without having to re-implement it. You just had to implement a couple different interfaces, and then now you can actually run commands like you could on the command line right inside Visual Studio. So this was something that was not available before, and a lot of people are asking for it. So all the output from all your scripts actually dumps out to here now, as well as you can run commands and stuff like that just right in Visual Studio. So let me show you an example of running tests. So in this case, I actually have this test fixture test case set up. This is actually using ps-sate instead of pester, but it's kind of the same concept between the two. The test fixture is the collection of tests that you want to run, and each one of the test cases is an individual type of part of the functionality that you want to test. So in this case, I'm just kind of testing the different parts of my module. So I import my module, I run one of the commands, and ensure that the output is the value that I expect. And if it's not the value I expect, then the test runner should actually let me know that. So I have this handy-dandy little test explorer now, and this will actually pick up all the different project types, like I said before. So if I had C# tests, they show up in here. C++ tests, they'd show up in here. So I can just right-click on there, run tests, and what it actually does is it starts up this test agent that will then run the tests and report the the status of the tests. So in this case, you can see one of my tests failed, get hypotenuse. It expected that the value be 123 when the actual value is 5.65. So you can see that is an example of failing an assertion. These other tests are all passing green. So what's neat is if you start changing things, you can validate your code changes by running these unit tests over and over again. So it kind of gives you that confidence that your scripts are behaving the way they should behave. And yeah, and it's all just kind of built into Visual Studio like that. So another thing that I wanted to show was that since I'm in Visual Studio, I can actually work on more than just PowerShell scripts at a time. So mixed in here, I have a web app that I made. It actually has a hypotenuse controller, so this is all written in C#. And pretty much what it does is it accepts two values, two doubles from a particular URL, and then it calculates the hypotenuse between those two. And the idea here is I can have a function call then inside my module called getHypotenuse, and I added a switch parameter that runs it in the cloud, quote unquote. So the idea is then I call invoke rest method. I pass or I call my URL that I want to call. In this case, it's calling the API hypotenuse controller, and then I'm passing in those two values that I wanted to pass in. And what's neat is I can set a breakpoint here, and I can also set a breakpoint in the C# code. And then if I set my project up to debug both of these at the same time, I can actually step in between the two projects and debug both types of code all in one place without having to jump in between the ISE and Visual Studio and all that kind of stuff. So now if I actually run this to the cloud script, I it'll actually go out and import my module, call get hypotenuse with the run in the cloud flag, and that will actually invoke the REST method. So now if I run this, you can see it started up my my web server, and that's why this Internet Explorer opened up. Now I call get hypotenuse. I can actually step into there. You can see running in cloud is true, so I'm actually going to fall in here, and I'm going to call invoke REST method. Now if I do that, what will actually happen? Once this guy gets started, it's got to load some stuff.
Alright, we're recording.
Cool. Alright, so I have this little script that's going to actually call my get hypotenuse function with the run in the cloud parameter. What it's going to do is it's going to actually go out and invoke a REST method that I have inside this C# math cloud project. So since I'm in Visual Studio, I have all these right next to each other, and I can actually go out and open this C# project. And if I go to my hypotenuse control, you'll see that it actually has a function to calculate the hypotenuse of a triangle based on 2 inputs. So what's neat is I can actually go ahead and set a breakpoint in the hypotenuse controller as well as my PowerShell script. So if I go out to math.ps1, set a breakpoint there, now I should be able to run my to the cloud ps1 script, and I can actually debug between the 2 different types of code. So you can see here I hit my breakpoint inside PowerShell. You can see run in the cloud is true. I have my 2 values for A and B, which I'm going to pass into my C# code. So from there, it's going to actually load up all the symbols for the particular C# thing I'm calling, and you can see now I'm actually inside my C# code. So you can see that I calculated 16 by 4 and 4 being passed in, and then 32 is C, and I'm going to return the square root of those 2 functions. So it's kind of neat because you can kind of work in this whole ecosystem of code without actually having to go between the ISE and Visual Studio. You can just kind of do it all right here, just like you would with any other managed or unmanaged code inside Visual Studio. So that's kind of the debugging experience inside Visual Studio. So I mean, you kind of have the full-featured debugging that you would get from any other Visual Studio language. There's some things that I still want to hook up, like the error list, and you can get a little richer. I want to hook up the performance tools as well. There's ways to implement, analyzers to analyze the performance of PowerShell scripts and stuff like that. And that'd be really cool to be able to do that. Yeah, so there's still a lot of work that can be done inside this integration. It's nowhere near complete. Some other things that I wanted to show off were one big benefit is source control integration. So this is one of my projects called Posh Internals. It's just like some low-level system tools that I built in PowerShell. And you can see it has these little lock icons next to each one of these projects because they're actually source controlled up in GitHub. So if I actually go out and open one of these projects, and if I were to just edit it at all and save it, you can see I get a little check mark. A little check mark means that there's a pending edit on here. And from there I can actually go into Team Explorer, and I can see which changes that I have that I've made that don't match up with the branch that is up inside GitHub. So you can see from there, I've edited handle.ps1, and I can actually right-click on that and compare with the unmodified changes. So really, I just added spaces. So right now, there's nothing changed. But if I were to go ahead and add some text to it, comparing with the unmodified, you'd see that I have added this text. So it's a good way to check things before you actually commit them to source control, and it works just like any other source control integration. So Visual Studio has all kinds of extensions for all different types of source control repositories. Built in are GitHub or Git support and TFS support. There's also SVN support and Mercurial support that you can download through the Visual Studio Gallery. So one of the cool things about being inside the Visual Studio ecosystem is that you have access to all the other things that are part of the Visual Studio ecosystem. So that's just kind of the neat benefits of this. So that's kind of the idea behind source control. It's nothing too fancy there, but I mean, it is nice that it's all integrated just like that for you. All right, so I'm going to open another project. So one of the other things that is kind of big with having PowerShell inside Visual Studio that I think a lot of developers don't really realize is that Visual Studio offers a lot of automation when it comes to code generation. So one of the other PowerShell MVPs, Jim Christopher, actually has another project that's inside Visual Studio that utilizes PowerShell, and that's Studio Shell. And what Studio Shell allows you to do is treat the Visual Studio automation framework as a provider. So just like you would the registry provider or the file system provider, you can then use the Visual Studio automation framework as a provider. So the Visual Studio framework is referred to as the DTE, and it's kind of the automation framework for Visual Studio. And from there, you can actually step down into the different parts of Visual Studio, which is kind of neat. So if I what's going on here? Huh? It's kind of weird. I'm going to quick restart Visual Studio, otherwise that's going to be a really boring demo.
I'm small.
1 second, I can't seem to get to my back to where we were. Alright, so I can import the Studio Shell module. So what that gives me is a new PS drive. If I do get PS drive, you'll see that I have a DTE provider. From there, you can actually step into Visual Studio pretty much. So now I'm in the DTE. If I do a DIR, you can see things like the add-ins, the command bars, the commands, the debugger, output panes. So these are all the different components that you can actually automate inside Visual Studio. So for example, if I go into the Windows, I can actually do a DIR in there. And what it'll do, eventually, is output all the different windows that are available inside Visual Studio. So these are all the ones that are open, like autos, call stack, class view, that kind of thing, locals, object browser. And you can invoke different things on those different types of windows. So it's kind of a neat way to actually write scripts to do things that are productive inside Visual Studio, aside from just writing PowerShell just to write PowerShell. So one of the neat things that I did as a demo for some guys here at the office was a way to generate pretty much classes for C# based on a PowerShell script that you write inside Visual Studio using Jim's tool. So Jim actually gave a demonstration of this at the PowerShell Summit, and he tells a funny story where he had a client that had this large code base where he had to go in and rename a bunch of things inside the code base, and he had pretty much said it was going to take him a while, and they're like, oh yeah, that's fine. And then he realized that he could do all this with Studio Shell, and rather than taking a week of his time by doing it by hand, he actually managed to automate actually writing code with code. So said it took him 2 hours to write the script, and it ran for a really long time because there was a lot of code, but he was out drinking a beer or something like that rather than actually sitting there and doing it all by hand. So I kind of did a similar example, and this little example, what it does is it actually goes out to Wikipedia and it downloads the list of human superheroes in DC Comics, and then I kind of grab the first 10 and I do a little string manipulation to get it in the right format, but then I actually go out and I create new C# classes based on this PowerShell script that I wrote. And this is all using the GTE and the code provider that you can use inside Visual Studio. So now I've generated all these different C# classes, pretty much. So you have all these different C# classes of the people that, the different superheroes. From there, what I can actually do is, if I wanted to, can actually go out and add new properties. So if I run this thing, what it does is it goes out and it finds all the classes that are inside the Visual Studio, pretty much, and then I create a new property that's cool or is cool, and then put that on each one of those classes. So if I run this little script, it'll actually go out and you'll start seeing stars for each one of the classes that it's modifying. If we open one of these up, you can see that it actually added a property to this particular class. So it's kind of a neat way to quickly get things done inside Visual Studio. You can see, like for example, this one's named cool, this one's named is cool, because I randomized it. It was either cool or is cool. But let's say someone comes by later on and they want to, change that to something else, and you have hundreds of classes that might use this thing. What you can do is you could actually do something very similar and call other functions, such as rename symbol, which would allow you to rename all the cools to is cool. And that's just kind of a code standard they could have, that they want to be is cool rather than cool. So now you'd go out and you could see that anything that was cool is now is cool. So that's kind of a neat way of integrating with Visual Studio beyond just basic PowerShell integration. So this is kind of taking it to the next level where you could generate all kinds of things inside Visual Studio. Let's say you're working on any number of projects. You could use this kind of functionality to make your job easier and get work done faster, sort of thing. So that's mostly Jim. I provide the syntax highlighting, this kind of stuff, so you could write scripts and invoke Jim's stuff. But it's just kind of cool additional tooling inside PowerShell that you might not be aware of. PowerShell Tools. So some other things that I want to talk about, kind of where I'm going next for this. Lots of bug fixes. There's lots of problems with Visual Studio 2012 at the moment. Before I actually get started on this, I wanted to show you guys the isolated shell. So, you might not have Visual Studio available. So one thing you can do is download the isolated shell, like I was saying. It's about 200 megabytes. There's actually two components you need to download. You need to download the isolated shell. That kind of gives you the guts of Visual Studio, but no way to launch it. And then you download this other thing called the integrated shell. And what the integrated shell does is it launches the components, kind of provides an entry point to the isolated shell, and it gives you pretty much an empty Visual Studio window. It doesn't have any languages built into it, doesn't have any of the extensions. It's missing a lot of the features. I don't think it even has source control in it, but you can add any extension that supports integrated shell right into it. So if you go out to extensions and updates inside an integrated shell Visual Studio and go online, you'll be able to see all the different things that do support integrated shell. So for example, if you're using SCN or Subversion, you could install that into integrated shell and then have source control support, even though it isn't built in. And a lot of the tools like PHP tools and Python tools all support integrated shell, including PowerShell tools. So that allows you to kind of get these, a free version of Visual Studio and add languages into it beyond that. So just like I would any other, Visual Studio, I can open the project, look at the different files, that kind of thing. I have the PowerShell debug interactive that's available, and I can run commands just like I would in Visual Studio. So it's pretty full featured. The thing is, you'll notice the big difference is when you go to create a project, the only thing that you have available here is PowerShell, because it's the only extension that I've installed. So it's nice. So My thing with this is, it doesn't offer as much as I'd say the full-fledged Visual Studio in terms of benefits, but it's still cool to be a little more powerful than the ISE. So you can kind of do things a little more than you can with the ISE inside something like this, but obviously it's a lot bigger download and install than just. That's kind of cool though. All right, let me see if I can get out of this guy. All right, so kind of where I'm headed next. Lots of bug fixes, like I was saying. I just started experimenting with the integrated shell support, so there are some problems that I've noticed. Sometimes it likes to crash a lot, and it doesn't debug very well. I've been noticing it launching files in Notepad and stuff like that, which is a little bit weird. So I'm going to be focusing on that in 2012 support because that seems to have a lot of problems installing and stuff like that. The other big thing is MS build tasks. So one concept inside Visual Studio is the ability to run things during builds. And right now the PowerShell support is extremely limited for that. It doesn't really do much. But you could do all kinds of things like publishing scripts to Posh code, or creating module manifests, or packaging things up and deploying modules somehow. Now with the onset of ps-get and everything like that, there's ways that we could deploy modules to ps-get via MS build steps, and then you would just build it in Visual Studio and do that, and it would do that all automatically. So it'd make the whole ecosystem of building new modules a lot better and easier to maintain. And that kind of falls on the better project system support, because those are kind of two different things, or kind of the same thing. The other big thing, a big downside of using the PowerShell tools for Visual Studio is there is no x64 support. Visual Studio itself is a 32-bit process, and there is no 64-bit Visual Studio. So it is unable to actually run lots of the newer things that are coming out. So that's a big hurdle that I need to kind of jump over, and I've been told by a lot of people it's going to be a very difficult one to, solve because of the way that the PowerShell runtime works and everything. But things that aren't supported inside Visual Studio PowerShell tools are the DSC stuff, so you can't create configurations or anything like that. Workflows aren't supported, and a big ask that I've had is the SharePoint module is actually 64-bit, and that will not actually load inside Visual Studio. So some other ideas that I've been throwing around are remoting support and attaching to processes and stuff like that. But those are kind of where it's headed. So there's lots more to do. I think it's still a neat project. I still think it offers a lot more than just the ISE alone. But depending what you're doing, it might be overkill. So it's just another tool to have in your toolbox if you need it. So it's kind of all I wanted to show in terms of demonstration and kind of where we're headed next. But if you're out looking for me, the easiest way to get a hold of me is Twitter. If you head out to my blog, which is at csharpening.net, that actually has my email address on it and stuff if you want to ping me for whatever reason. And then all my projects are available on GitHub. So I have a couple projects out there, including Posh Tools. The Posh Internals project is out there. Check that out. So, so I want to thank you guys for having me on your user group meeting. Until next time, I guess.
That's awesome, Madam. Appreciate very much your presentation. It was great.
Yeah, no problem.
One suggestion. Do you have anything on your blog site about the 64-bit support? What it can do in one sense. Have you blog on that?
I have not. I really should document that somewhere, because I do get a lot of people asking me about that.
Yeah, that sounds very, very, very good. Learns the limitation helps, because then we can use all the tools. And when you're talking about runbooks and stuff, that's mostly done on the server side, is my understanding, right? Unless I'm wrong.
Right.
Yeah, because I deal more with SQL Server side, and I'm trying to get my hands into the desired state configuration and all this stuff,
Right.
But so for most part you could use this, you know what I mean? But it's also good to know the limitation in order to use the other tools that Microsoft's providing for us. So
Yep, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
I may want to add, so I have a couple example here. So you done with the presentation? Can I take over?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so that way I'm going to show you, I did load on my machine the SQL data tools for Visual Studio 2013, and for the purpose of an additional demo here, let's see if I can find it here. Yeah. Okay, so I got, let me set my demonstration here. Okay, let me get my screen up here. My machine is slow now because I have too many stuff open. Now this is an example of what I'm being demoing also since last year on Adam's PowerShell tool for Visual Studio. In this case, I'm using Visual Studio 2013. This is the piece where you build packages, as integration services packages to run stuff. And it is just, I'm not going to run this, but just to give you an idea that you can use .NET. This is the script task where you can add an example here. You can call your PowerShell script automatically to run and perform a task that's already running as a script, but you can schedule it on SQL Server to run, right? So at the same time, this is how you get to the script task editor, which allow you to define, you pick your language you want to use. In this case, I'm using, in the background here, I'm using C#. And for a few lines of code, you can, consume that script and run it in a SQL schedule task, basically. And let me just go ahead and see an example of the. Come on, there you go. There you go. Awesome. Here's an example of what an integration service task will look like. This is just no-nonsense task that runs each thing individually, which shows the flow. So you can consume that PowerShell script. And in this case, you can also save this into your Team Foundation server if you're using Team Foundation server, and you can include your scripts in it. So I give an example here. I can open that script, and thanks to Adam, we can the IntelliSense with the color lines on PowerShell, easy to identify. So he had done a very good job to providing us this tool. Beside all the limitations he was talking about, the 64-bit with the 64-bit version, but it still is, you can use this. I mean, there's no reason why not. And for more advanced stuff, because if this, Adam is going to keep building on this, right? And you can still use other editors. You can use PowerShell ISC if you want, and version 3 and greater have improved a lot. Still, my favorite one is Sapiens Technology, which you can see here. You can increase the font of the letter. You can have another area here where show the function. In one way, Adam showed you how to do that also in Visual Studio. So it is amazing. You can have the best of all worlds of all editors and still complete your task at hand. This is great. So Adam, once again, I appreciate very much you being part of our meeting here, and I'm going to post this recording as soon as I can, and hopefully we all the little hiccups is going to be seamless, because I've been posting and pausing and recording again. So
yeah, let's hope so.
All right. Well, man, I appreciate. Do anybody have any questions for Adam? Just in case. Greg, are you there? Great presentation. Thank you very much, Ray.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it. He said, great presentation, Adam.
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation as well. And just wanted to say what I watched and more.
This is NASA. Countdown to the launch of the shuttle. Oh, excuse me, the launch of this ticket. Sorry, Greg. You sound like you were a NASA controller talking to the astronauts.
Yeah, oh my God.
No problem, man. Ray's type and see what it says here. They got against us tonight. Yes, but we prevail. We prevail. We did the recording, and it's gonna be posted anyway. Okay, guys. Hey, but there's nothing else. Adam, again, thank you very much, man. We'll love to have you back if you have any more topics on those little goodies that you keep adding into the into GitHub. Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll
Yeah,
make sure
yeah,
to let you know.
this is a very open user group. You know, we do admin, Azure, SQL databases, tips and tricks. I mean, it is all is a go.
Cool.
All
All
right.
right. Yeah, I'll definitely keep it in mind.
All right. Greg,
All right.
thank you very much for attending us. I'll be posting this. I'm gonna try to post it tonight. So I'm gonna try to do this like now. That way I get out of the way. Yeah, I have the tendency of doing it like 3 weeks later,
Yeah,
because
right.
I get tied up. But for this one, man, for Adam, I'm gonna do this tonight. Will be posted tonight.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for having me on.
No, man, thanks to you, man. I remember with Power GUI, you were good with that.
That's where my roots are.
Yes. Well, man, guys, thank you very much, and have a
Yeah.
great scripting night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks a lot. Talk to you guys later.
Hey, bye-bye.